If you'll come with me, you'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too.
You float too!
A Stephen King podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 15 of We All Float Down Here, a Stephen King podcast. I'm Oscar.
And I'm Simon.
And today we're going to be talking about Misery.
Classic Stephen King book, classic Stephen King movie. We've got, actually, should we do the copies now? So I think we've each worked out this is the book we have the most copies of. Do you want to go through yours?
Yeah, okay, so I've got 5 copies. The first one is the hardback of the Rainbow copies. And then I've got this, which was the copy I read, which both times I think.
That's a fairly new edition.
Yeah, and it's really good. Then 2 kind of like second-hand copies. And then a first edition, which is definitely the best one. This is great.
Yeah. So I have that same first edition. Mine's just a little better. Sorry about that, but it's true. I have this weird bind-up, which is The Shining, Carrie, and Misery, all in one. Which I don't know why we need those, but I would say that is to do with them being successful movies and probably came out around the time of the Misery movie. I have a copy in German, which I don't speak, but I love that. And then this is the classic for me. This edition is the one that I would have owned the first time around, and actually we'll get into this, but never got around to reading until more recently. And a couple of other paperbacks in a similar style that I quite like. And I reckon I've got at least one other bind up and maybe one other copy. So I reckon I'm running about 8 or 9 all up, which is insane. But I love Misery.
Yeah, Misery's great. This is one of his most popular books as well. It's very iconic.
Yeah. So when did this come out? 87?
This came out in 87 and then the movie came out in 1990. So
yeah, pretty quickly afterwards. Obviously the book was a hit, and we've talked about this before in the other episodes that we've done to date. Stephen King movie, book to movie thing is just going off. So it had just come out the year before and had just been turned into a mini series, and this follows on from that in terms of the timeline, that this would have been picked up around the similar time and been big. We'll talk about the book first, but for me, I just want to clarify what I started saying. I bought the book very eager to read it, but I ended up watching the movie and loving the movie so much I watched it a bunch. So I didn't get round to reading the book until about 5 years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's one of the more recent reads, and I must have seen the film 10 times before reading it.
That's crazy. I did watch the movie first though. Twice actually. I saw it the first time, and then I saw it at the movie theaters, which was great.
Yeah, we went to a retro screening, which was fun.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
But then this was also my first ever Stephen King novel. I read 2 novellas before this. The Body and The Mist.
Yeah.
I think The Body was my The Body was my first, but this was my.
Because you would have known Stand By Me.
Yeah. This was my first Stephen King novel, so it's very special for that reason. Yeah. And I just fell in love with Stephen King immediately because of this.
This is classic Stephen King storytelling, and there's a bit of meta stuff going on around it too. Should we get into that?
Yeah, so the whole plot of the story is that Paul Sheldon is a writer of a fantasy series called Misery.
Yeah.
And
that's
he's
the character, Misery's child and all of this sort of stuff.
He's got the final book coming out where Misery, the character, dies, and then he gets into a car crash and is rescued by a nurse who happens to be his number 1 fan.
So he has this whole ritual that he goes away with the only copy of the book, and he stays in a remote cabin, and it's very much a thing where, because I remember we talked about this a bit, you were talking about modern versions of Misery, and it's like it very much couldn't happen in the current day because you just GPS track the person, their cell phones. So the whole point is he drives away, he tells his agent and his daughter, right, I'm off for a week. So no one knows how to contact him. So when he has this accident and he can't be found, they don't know that for ages. And his number 1 fan is looking after him, but she's also actually doping him up on medicine and keeping him in that state.
And is a bit of a psychopath, yeah.
And that more and more comes out. I mean, we can fully spoil a 40-year-old book, of course, but more and more comes out. But
the thing is, she is super... He's also writing on the side another book that doesn't have a title and is a bit of like a draft, and she's not happy about that and wants him to stay in his lane and write the Misery books, which is like a meta commentary on how just a few years before this and a few episodes back on the podcast, The Eyes of the Dragon, which was like a middle grade fantasy book, his fans were not a fan of him, you know, changing up, switching genres,
not writing horror,
and
writing for young adults,
you know, and that's kind of a commentary on that,
and also, because we've been through this in our episodes and explained this timeline, but I think Misery was actually going to come out as a Richard Bachman book, which would have been another nice twist on it. But of course, Bachman got found out, King got found out, and he had to admit around the time of Thinner that he was Richard Bachman. So then it became a Stephen King book, because I think he would have been writing this around the same time as The Dark Half. And I think The Dark Half, which we're going to get to in a couple more books, is kind of another version of this, playing with the idea of a pen name versus, like, maybe that's him really putting the Bachman pen name to bed in a way too. So these things were on his mind at the same time. But Misery is an Academy Award winning film and a huge film, and I think the film it's got a couple of amazing performances and a couple of key scenes, and I think the film has been for fans even if they haven't read the book. But it's probably, would you say, one of the more faithful,
for sure,
adaptations too?
One of the best adaptations. But this book, it's definitely in my top 5, probably top 3 Stephen King books for sure. Yeah, probably top 3 because just how special it was, because it was the first one I read.
Kind of really got you hooked.
And it does get you hooked. Like, it's pretty short. It's like 300 or 400 pages.
Yeah, it's a nice
which
tight.
Is pretty short for Stephen King, and it's fast paced. Even one thing that's so incredible is how gripping it is, and how claustrophobic it is, and how suspenseful it is. But it's only set in one room with 2 characters. Like,
there's really only 4 characters in total that get lines. The other 2 are really like his agent and like a police chief detective guy, the sheriff of the small town. They're really the only other sort of and they're almost walk-ons. Yeah, and there's not much more beyond that.
Yeah, it's great how hooked it gets you from the start, and it's just a very easy read. I reread this like not too long after I first read it, and that was kind of a bit of a bad idea, I think,
you
on
read
my
it
part.
Again too quickly.
I read it again too quickly, which doesn't ruin my overall perspective of the book, but for a little point it did, because I was like, oh, is this as good as I remembered it? But I just think that I read it it was like less than a year after, and I think that was just not the best idea for sure.
So I read this, as I mentioned, only 5 years ago, and for the first time. And around that time, I also read The Shining for the same reason. I had seen the movie so many times, but of course, The Shining, and we've done an episode on
pretty
this.
much 2 different.
The Shining
stories.
is a different treatment. It's Stanley Kubrick's treatment of that, and you've just watched The Shining again, so you know this just recently. But The Shining is its own thing, the movie, and so I loved finally reading the Shining book, but I was so used to the movie, so I didn't feel that with this.
It feels kind of weird reading The Shining, and I love the Shining book, like not nearly as much as the Shining movie. The Shining movie is like my favorite movie ever, but I think of it as like a different thing. But this is just like, they're so hand in hand, like they're just so similar and so spot on that it's just.
But I had a great experience finally reading this. The caveat is just, I wish I'd read it sooner. I wish I had been right in the thick of my first obsession with Stephen King and I'd read this. But, and we'll talk more about the movie in a minute, but the movie just really stayed with me on such a level that I struggled to commit to reading the book. I'm really glad I did. My slight hesitation about giving this book maybe perfect score.
Yeah, we both think the same on this.
Yeah.
The
Do you want to jump in?
the sections where it is written as a misery book, like as
the book within the book.
the book within the book.
Yeah.
Those sections are extremely tedious and badly written on purpose, but like still just not fun to read. And to be honest, like, I get what he's trying to do, but I don't think that it's that relevant.
Perhaps fair to say that readers of fantasy and romance and romantasy, which it kind of is, probably get a real kick out of the meta commentary of this in a way that we don't. But one thing that is cute and cool is the typewriter is missing the N, and so in these sections,
that is cool.
The N is written in, and so I don't know. That's kind of just cool. That's the different font and everything.
It doesn't overall ruin my taste on the book because I think you can actually just skip them. To be honest,
it's just the least favourite bit of it.
I've read them before, but if I'm rereading it or you know just getting super bored by it, you can just skip it. In my opinion, like it's not super important.
And there are some slight different things, like the torture scenes in the book are actually more graphic and more gratuitous violence than in the film, and that's obviously a toning down in terms of what they can get away with on the screen and not have like the ultra R rating. But it's also, I think it's to the benefit of the film, and in that it's slightly more realistic. Like she goes so crazy in the book, that I think that's, to pick back up on your point, that's him having major fun as he's the guy in the bed, he's the writer, and the crazy character, that's his critics and his audience that didn't like his last work, and he's painting them to be an absolute monster. So there's an absurdity there that he's going for and having major fun with, which is cool. But in the movie they had to go, well, how do we make this character realistically psychopathic,
my memory's a little bit faded on this one because I haven't read it for a while. The first time I read it in 2022, then I read it in 2023, and I didn't bother to reread it for the podcast, but I remember just being so gripped by it the first time, and it was my favourite book ever for a long time. It was my favourite Stephen King book for a huge amount of time until Pet Sematary dethroned it. But even when I read Pet Sematary for the first time, it hadn't dethroned it. It was just, slowly thinking about it. But this is genuinely just such an important book for me, and I love it so much.
We have waded through some slightly trickier books for us in terms of the Barkmans are hit and miss.
Yeah, for sure.
The Talisman we found really hard work. But that was on the back of a real hot streak, like Cujo, Christine, Pet Sematary, all that stuff, right? At Firestarter, the early 80s is pumping. In the mid 80s, he has this period that we're not super sold on, but we're into the highlights. And then you've got to say the mojo is back hugely with It and Misery back to back.
Yeah. I think people, when people talk about how great the 80s were for King, they're really referring to stuff like this. I think it starts
Misery,
off so
It,
strong, and then it peaks in places like It, and then Misery, and then I haven't read Needful Things, but wait, that might be the 90s.
That is early 90s.
The Dark Half, stuff like that, and then there's stuff in the middle that I do like, the start, the first 3 years. It's just, I do think the 80s is not his best decade, to be honest.
Right.
I think,
but it is the name-making decade in terms of,
but,
he's just a franchise by the 80s.
But it does have the Talisman, and it does have the Barkmans that suck. Yeah, I just think that this is right here. This stuff like this is the highlights.
Yeah.
The 300, 400, 500 page books that are just fast-paced, good supernatural, or this isn't supernatural, but just supernatural or psychological horror. That stuff is the best.
And I'm interested in the fact that he's still writing. I love the short stories. I've still got the Holly books to really get on board with, but I wish he would write a book this size again, like a taut single storyline. Maybe as a farewell book, as a retirement book. Maybe as a rather than leave you with a 900-page epic or tying up the Dark Tower or whatever, some of the fantasy stuff, which I'm sure a lot of fans would really be into. I want something the size of Carrie or Misery, I've said that for a long time that I want to return to this, and I think as a blueprint for a really great, gripping, readable horror thriller, you can't do better. Someone asked me the other day what their first Stephen King should be, and I said Misery. Like, that's a good first choice, because anything else is
that's
loaded.
That's 100% what I'd recommend.
Yeah,
like,
because Carrie's great, but it's 50 years old, and it's got some language and some characterization that requires some explaining.
All the journal extracts,
and
stuff
it's
like
just
that.
whereas this makes sense.
Besides the like 1 or 2 or 3 Misery sections, it's just
it still
perfect.
makes sense.
It's just perfect front to back. But I mean, I just wish. I do wish he'd come to this type of thing. I'm a big fan of the like psychological thriller horror books, and then the supernatural horror books. I'm not a huge fan of the fantasy stuff. I haven't read all that much of the Dark Tower, and I think that looks really good. But stuff like the Talisman isn't my thing, and I'm not really a fan of what he's doing at the moment with like the kind of like airport like thriller stuff. I think it started really strong with Mr. Mercedes, but it's kind of been dragged way too far at this point. Stuff like this, it's just perfect. It's so good,
and this setting of it happening in the real time of the 80s when there was no cell phones, no GPS, is probably like a really cool thing to hook back into now for a reader. Like a reader raised on the internet and connectivity would have a real blast, I think. Getting into this and recognizing when it was said and why this could happen.
And the book is just so good at giving you these like little hints of how insane she is. Like, she'll just say the most like out of pocket, weird, random stuff that's like humorous but also just weird, and it's just like, I think he's really good at that. And I mentioned that in It, he just kind of gives you like one sentence or two sentences to just like sum up how despicable the character is, and I think that's very present here as well.
And it's also so great at having Paul Sheldon's interior monologue, because he's several times over, because you've got his panicked state about the situation he's in, you've got his actual narrative that he's writing in the books, the book within a book, and then you've got his commentary on that, how he's writing that to order. So he's kind of writing that for an audience of one. He's writing that for Annie, the nurse, his captor, who presents as his saviour, but she is his captor. And so you've got all these different strands of his interiority and his interior monologue going, which is really, really cool. It's so well dealt with.
Paul Sheldon is like a really good character, and you're rooting for him. He's one of my favourite Stephen King protagonists. I think sometimes, I mean, this has one of his best antagonists as well, possibly the best character of the book still, but I just want to focus on Paul Sheldon because I feel like lots of the time his antagonists kind of overshadow the protagonists, and this, it's kind of just like, it's a perfect... the other thing is that it also ends really well as well. Yeah,
which again, and I think that's to do with the trimmer page count. It's tidy.
I'm not saying it's like a perfect ending. I'm just saying it ends how it should have.
It's complete.
It's complete. Whereas
it signs off.
Yeah, and obviously that's like a Stephen King thing of not
sticking the landing.
Not sticking the landing. Either going for something way too random and way too just like abrupt, or like not leading into not doing anything special at all. Like, but this he's in the middle of those two things now, and it works perfectly.
Look at this cover. If you looked at this now, you'd think that was an AI cover. It's amazing. So is that coming out? Like, there's the wheelchair, and then there's the shadow of her with the axe, but that looks AI, and that is absolutely not. Should we rate the book?
I'm going to rate it a 10 out of 10, honestly.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's probably my second favourite Stephen King book ever.
Yeah.
Behind Pet Sematary, and for a long time it would have been this. It's just that, I don't know, Pet Sematary kind of, I think, is a better book, but this is the one that might mean the most to me, or I might be the most nostalgic for. I think it's a 10 out of 10. No, like, even what I said, I think, another reason that I probably put Pet Sematary slightly over it is it doesn't have, like, the stuff that I am critical of, like the typewriting stuff, but I just think it's.
But how
it's all
cool
too
is that
perfect.
you get to see the typewriting stuff in the typewriter font
Yeah, that
in
is
the middle
cool.
of the book and switching,
And they're not even
It's
that.
cool.
They're not long sections at
Yeah.
all. They're like 5 pages or like 10 pages. So I think it's a perfect book.
I'm going to give it a 9.5.
That's
I'm
fair.
going to give
I
it a
probably-
9.5 for 2 reasons. Because I took so long to get to it, I reckon it would be a knocked out of the park 10 if I'd read it back in the day. And I'm just going to dock a little bit because of the criticism around the thing.
Yeah.
But man, it's so close to a perfect book. And because I think it's good if we don't have the exact same scores. The other quirk I have about this book, which I love, is I have 2 copies the same. This one arrived via a Trade Me purchase with this bookmark in it. Now the person has clearly handmade this bookmark, which
That's some Annie Wilkes.
I thought that was some meta Annie Wilkes stuff, and if it wasn't, I'm not mocking the person, but I kind of am. I just think it's so funny. So I have that copy there as well, and so that's the reason I have 2 copies that are the exact same edition. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Let's talk about the movie.
James Caan and Kathy Bates. Now I just want to immediately say Kathy Bates, one of the best performances in horror history.
Well, more than that, it's
Yeah.
a star-making turn. She was
'Cause-
kind of a
yeah,
nobody.
Yeah. James Caan does an amazing job, but is still unfortunately overshadowed because that's just how it's going to happen.
But obviously, he's got major credits to his name. He's an excellent actor, or was an excellent actor, and he was, his I guess his big stuff is really The Godfather and Jaws. But he's in anything he's in, he's excellent, and he was well chosen for this. In the supporting cast, you've really only got a couple of other people, but you've got a couple of big names there too in the supporting cast. Yeah, so they're the main 2, right? They carry it, like we said in the novel. Those are the 2 characters. But you have the very famous Lauren Bacall, who was a star from many years earlier. She plays his agent, so it actually just says special appearance by Lauren Bacall because she's probably in it for 5 minutes screen time. And then you have Richard Farnsworth, who's again an actor from another time, a cowboy actor predominantly, in a lot of westerns, an amazing actor. His last film role after this was David Lynch's The Straight Story. So he did a couple of things.
That, right?
So he did a couple of things after this, but that's your main. But what a dream team lineup here! So you've got a Stephen King source material, the screenplays by William Goldman, who's super famous screenwriter who did The Princess Bride, with Rob Reiner, who directed this.
So
Rob Reiner's already done Stephen King.
Stephen King specifically chosen for this because when he watched Stand By Me,
Yeah.
he was in tears at how perfect the movie was and how perfectly it nailed that novella. And I do think Rob Reiner's incredible. That run that he went on in the 80s and 90s is just unmatched.
Well,
absolutely unmatched.
Speaking of tears, R.I.P. Rob Reiner.
Yeah,
Still, of
yeah,
course, but
of
yeah,
course.
exactly.
Rest in peace,
We
yeah.
both went to Stand By Me
Yeah.
at the cinemas recently, and it's like a lot of people were teared up.
That
at
was
that.
bro. Stand By Me is a top 10, maybe top 5 movie of all time for me. I think that's such an incredible movie, and I do think
perfect
that
film.
that's a perfect film, and this is a near perfect film. I think that he is this. It might be a hot take because he's only done 2, but I think he is the best King director out there.
Well,
I
he
think
made 2 perfect.
He made
films.
2 perfect films of some of the best material. I wish he could have done more.
Yeah.
And I do think that he is better than like Mike Flanagan and Frank Darabont.
Yeah. Kathy Bates was a theatre actor primarily. She'd done a couple of bit parts. She really wasn't a film actor. And I think I'm right in saying if this hadn't hit, she probably wouldn't have become a film actor.
Did she win the Oscar for
Yeah,
this?
so
That's
this
incredible.
is
That's
just amazing because it's a genre that doesn't
and then
generally...
right after the Silence of the Lambs would have won Best Picture as
Yeah,
well.
so it was a good time for horror in the start of the early 90s in terms of it getting those awards and getting a bit of like recognition for its literary ambitions. Like those like Misery and Silence of the Lambs are well written books that translated really well.
Yeah,
to the
they're more.
screen.
They're more. You can
More
make the
of a
argument
thriller.
they're more thrillers, but
Yeah, I mean this is a horror because
this is a
of
horror for
this
sure.
is a horror because of what happens in it. And so I mentioned before that some of the horror is downscaled. Well, there's the very famous hobbling scene.
Yeah,
And-
that is incredible. One of the best scenes in
And
horror,
I think
for
it's
sure.
better for the way they did it in the movie. So in the book, she actually cuts the feet off and gets out a blowtorch and starts rounding the stumps, and it's so gratuitous. But in the movie, she puts a block of wood between his legs and starts this amazing monologue. And she hits him one ankle, and just before she hits the other ankle, she basically whispers, "God, I love you." You know, which is this wonderful unhinged stuff.
Yeah, I think that it's also amazing because it's still super, like, it makes you flinch.
Still graphic. Yeah, you feel it.
There are so many suspenseful scenes in this movie. I think my favourite scene in the movie is when she goes out to buy him paper for his book, for the typewriter. He sneaks out and he's like crawling on the floor.
Yeah, he's got a wheelchair.
He's on the wheelchair. He's like crawling on the floor, and then he hears her. He hears her truck, and he's like in a race to get back to the bedroom. I think that I'm not too sure. It probably is. I'm not too sure that it's in the book, but yeah, in a movie, it just hits much harder.
It is in the book, but it's so much better with their full visual.
It's just genuinely it's a perfect scene. It's my favorite scene of the movie. I think. He knocks off like the little miniature like penguin or whatever
ornament,
it is.
Yeah. And he puts
puts it back and like doesn't like he makes it face like a slightly different way, and then later in the movie she knows it.
She points out
that's like the start of the hobbling scene, right? She's
You've been, that's it. She's like, I've got to stop you from moving.
Yeah, that's that chunk in the middle. Also, like the first real scene where you realize she's a bit weird is like when she's mad about the use of swearing and the use of swearing in his new book. And she like spills the soup all over him, and then what is it, like the cockadoodie, like
cockamamie,
like all the,
she calls him Mr. Man.
Yeah, all her like replacements for swear words and all her weird like lingo. She's so well written,
and she's one of those great Stephen King in the 80s folksy kind of characters. You know, like full of the kind of weird little rural folk idiom, and but in the case of her, it's done with It's done with this sinister. You can feel the sinister. You know something's not right, and I guess it's that great cat and mouse 2-person thriller where we, as the audience, in both the book and the movie, we know it a little bit before the character knows that he's, and then we watch him clicking to, oh God, like I am not being looked after here. This is weird, you know. And I think that's just done so well. The movie is like the book. The movie is trim and taut, and it gets the job done, and it doesn't stick around. You know, sometimes you can have Shawshank Redemption is a great example of a really good movie that covers everything that's in the novella, that does a really, really good job, but it is quite long, especially since it was based on a novella. You could argue that a tiny bit could be trimmed from that, but this is like 90 minutes, or 91 or something, or 100 minutes, so it's perfect movie length. It's perfect length to, you know, I watched this recently. I didn't reread the book, but I thought I'm going to watch the film one more time before so in the last month or so, and you watched it as well. Yeah, and it was like it's just such a good film to watch.
It's a masterpiece and like one of my favorite horror movies. But I do think over time, like I watched this when I was like 10 for the first time, and loved it, and then loved it a lot more when we saw it at the movie theater. I mean, that was just an incredible experience. But I think overall, as time goes on, I've watched more movies. I think it's not like one of my all-time favorite films like it used to be. It slowly goes down a little bit. Like the movies that you watch, you know, when you're really getting into film as an art form, like Quentin Tarantino and stuff like that, blows your mind, and then slowly kind of, you know, maybe goes down to from a 5-star to like a 4.5. And you sort of like it for the nostalgia. I'm not saying that this movie I only like it because of the nostalgia. I'm just saying that like it's not I don't think about it as much as I used to, but I do think it's a top 5 Stephen King adaptation of all time, right up there with The Shining. I mean, The Shining barely even counts as a Stephen King adaptation, but yeah, up there with like The Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, Carrie, stuff like that. It's up there for sure.
The Firestarter remake.
That's a joke. Yeah, that sucks.
So speaking of remakes, well, I teased this before. You can't really properly remake.
Yeah, unless you just set it in the 80s. But I think it would
unless you exactly.
I think it would be useless. I think
why
I'm
would you do
super
that?
glad they have made it recently. They did make a sort of like retelling of Misery
with a little wink
and
to it.
It's absolutely just the most hilarious thing that this was even greenlit and made. It's literally
what was it called?
It was called Hurry Up Tomorrow. It's it was like a promotional movie alongside The Weeknd's album. Yeah. And I really liked the album.
Yeah, so it's a vehicle for The Weeknd.
It's, the first, 20 minutes is like a concert movie. It's so stupid. It's like...
Also stars Jenna Ortega.
Yeah, Jenna Ortega. And it literally, she does a good job for what the movie is. Yeah. Because she's a pretty good actress. Yeah. But The Weeknd is an absolutely terrible actor to the point where it's hilarious. Yeah. And it feels so weird because it's like, why wouldn't you just make a concert film or just go listen to the album, which is like good? And it's just terrible. But the key is Jenna Ortega is like this super fan who kidnaps him and ties him to a bed and like makes him perform his songs. But it doesn't have any of the tension or like it's like start of the movie. Concert film. Yeah. Then they're like dating, I think, and then it's not really like. Then she ties him to a bed. He sings a few songs, and then the movie ends. Like it's like a 2 out of 10 for sure.
It is a really hard watch too. It is so badly paced.
It's almost worth it because there are scenes that are just funny, and if you are a Weeknd fan, then it's good to watch. But it's also upsetting.
It's kind of like a Razzie film. Like it's the sort of thing you watch. Yeah, I was going to say it's the sort of film you watch knowing, God, it's bad. And then if you are. If you're listening to this or watching this and you're a Stephen King fan and you didn't know about this, then of course you're going to want to see it to clock the Misery reference. But it's not super clear that it's a Misery reference. Yeah. I'm not saying it's like a Misery film at all. I just wanted to mention it slightly. It's a really bad film, but we don't even need to talk about that much. I just wanted to mention it because it's funny. To me, it tells me that you can't do them, even though, as you say, it's not strictly trying to be it. But it points out how you can't really. It's kind of
up there with Cujo, but the thing is, Cujo is getting a remake, and I actually am not too against that. Funnily enough, I feel like you're probably like a bit against that, but I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see if they kind of set it in the 80s, and they're sort of faithful, but don't just copy and paste the book and the movie. I think it could be good.
I think there's room for that to be really good and go somewhere slightly different.
Misery is just such a clean, completed property for Stephen King. It's got the perfect book. And then the perfect movie, and it's just one book, one movie, no spin-off movie, no sequel, no spin-off book or sequel book, or story. No sequel or spin-off movie. Yeah. You could I could see them doing an Annie Wilkes prequel or something.
They kind of have
story and like the TV show, like at Castle Rock.
They did that in Castle Rock.
That doesn't really count.
I think that's fair game, and that's why I think I think Annie Wilkes is such a tantalizing character. I can see why in the world of the Castle Rock show, which I haven't watched all of it, but I have watched some of it.
I haven't even watched any of it. Is it good?
Yeah, it is good. I do want to carry on with it, and
I haven't seen any of it, let alone the part where they do Annie Wilkes' backstory. But I feel like that's just bit biting off too more than they can chew, and I don't think they do a good job at it.
I think the person they cast for it was good, and it was pretty cool. But also, that's outside of King as well. That's him just saying, go at it with my properties and see what you come up with, and it doesn't really matter. It's not on him whether Castle Rock as a TV show is a success or not. But also Castle Rock, back to Rob Reiner, that was his production company, and that's R.I.P. Rob Reiner who made two amazing Stephen King films. So what are we going to rate Misery as a film?
I want to rate it a 9 or a 9.5. I would have given it a 10 at some point. I kind of just want to give it a 9 or a 9.5 because I don't feel like giving 2 10 out of 10s in one podcast because I'm trying to be more strict with the 10 out of 10. Like, I think that was the second 10 out of 10 I've given a book, and maybe the third 10 out of 10 I've given in anything, whether that's a TV show, book, or movie. I think it's like a 9.5 or a 9 for sure. Well, I think it's good. I think a 4.5 if we're going by like my Letterboxd rating. 4.5 out of 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a swap, and I'm going to give it a 10. Which is cool.
I can see that. I can see that for sure. I can see why someone because it doesn't have the physical Misery parts.
Yeah.
And,
The
you know,
book within a
I'm
book.
more of a movie fan than a book fan for sure.
And the other thing I'd say about this was,
I'd rather rewatch this than reread it.
Yeah.
For sure.
and I saw this when it came out, and yeah, pretty much as soon as it came out, although on video, I think certainly not at the movies. I only saw it at the movies those few years ago when we saw the retro screening. But when I watched it on video, it was just one of those, you know, it was like discovering The Shining or the Elm Street series or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was just one of those hallmark horror films where you're like,
It's great, yeah.
great, I've got this in my life now, and you want to watch it again. So
it was one of the first horror movies I ever watched, and I do hold it up there.
And I've sincerely never got sick of it. So
I was about 9 or 10 when you started introducing me to like heaps of the classic horrors, and you know, like I was getting super into like Child's Play, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, and it is really in that kind of classic horror type of realm. I just think, I'd rather rewatch. I mean, obviously, because it's shorter and you can watch it in one sitting. I'd rather rewatch it than reread it. But I just have so much. I think even though I prefer movies to books, as a book, I think it's better than Misery, I just have more memories for it.
If I hadn't overdosed on the film and I'd read the book a bit sooner, I would feel that way. Yeah. But for me, you can see the split. You can see why I'm giving this
I'll give it a 9.5, definitely not a 9. I'll give it a 9.5. And so that's a swap. You gave that a 9.5 for the book and a 10 for that. I gave it a 10 for the book and a 9.5 for that.
And we think, clearly, Misery is an amazing property.
It's so good.
It's been so well handled twice. Nothing else needs to happen with it, you know, it doesn't need to be remade. It doesn't need to be referenced in anything else. It exists beautifully and perfectly right now, and it's actually quite rare. I don't want them to touch it. It's quite rare in Stephen King world for something to be so good and be relatively left
and just
alone.
not for them to milk the IP.
Yeah, because there aren't. I mean, this is one of the first episodes that we've done where we haven't got toys and T-shirts and even the soundtrack. Like, I know the soundtrack exists and it's quite nice and everything, and one day I would probably get it. But you know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of Misery. Yeah, there's not. It hasn't been super milked, but it's still iconic. Yeah. I think it's. And I think that perfect. You know, if you grab your 2 hardcovers, the classic typewriter imagery is just wonderful. You know, there it is. I mean, I have my copy of. I mean, if I didn't like the book, I would still, as someone who writes and loves writing, I just think I get a kick out of seeing Misery in a typewriter there, because to me that's what it's kind of about, putting yourself through to get something out. Honestly,
I should have said this when we're kind of wrapping up now, and I should have said this in the overall book discussion, but I didn't think of it. I think Annie Wilkes might be my favourite Stephen King antagonist in terms of the books, for sure. I would go Pennywise, but because of how iconic it is, but I feel like it's a bit too milked. Well, it's just there's too much Pennywise stuff out there, and it's too milked. Yeah.
Well, is she the great human antagonist? Because she's completely and utterly human, even though she's grotesque and over the top.
It's her and Jack Torrance for sure. Those are the two best in terms of non-supernatural, and probably just my 2 favourites for sure. And it's a similar thing going on. There's an interesting thing in the Annie Wilkes history around trauma and stuff, and it's not super milked and explored, but there are avenues for what, was she the bad person, or did something bad happen to her? There's a little bit of could go either way with that, which I think is really cool. Yeah, and I'm genuinely surprised that they didn't make a prequel movie about a sequel about what happens. It would have been I could just see it a story of him writing another book, and then another fan returns, or them doing which I would have preferred this, doing a backstory for Annie Wilkes as because there's the journal extracts about her killing babies and stuff. That would have been more interesting, but I'm glad that they didn't do either of that, because I don't think that they would have made it successful. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and there was that TV show about Nurse Ratched. I didn't know. Yeah, there's a prequel series about Nurse Ratched and what she was like. Really? I didn't know that. And they only made one season. Good? Well, I really liked it, and I think you would, but not enough people did, because it exists as a one-off. That sounds stupid to me. Since exactly is so perfect. I'm sort of, even though I enjoyed it, I'm sort of saying that's the argument for why you wouldn't do it. And they could have done that with Annie Wilkes, and I think just the referencing of her in Castle Rock is enough. But she's my favourite Stephen King protagonist that he's written. I'm not sure if I'd say for the movies.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer for that off the top of my head, but as a Stephen King character, I think she's my favourite antagonist.
So Misery's a slam dunk. Up next, we've got the Tommyknockers,
Tommyknockers,
which is going to take us a while.
It might take us a while.
Because we're only getting into it now.
It's a 1,000 page book for the copy I'm reading. It's like 980 pages, and I'm like 50 to 100 pages in. So yeah, it's definitely going to take a while.
And it's a 4-hour movie, TV miniseries movie, which I watched back in the day. Actually filmed in New Zealand.
Those like 90s Stephen King 3-hour miniseries are not fun.
So that's going to be a chore as well, potentially. But I have fond memories of it, and I think of the TV movie. I think that'll get me through a rewatch. But the book's going to be a big undertaking. So we'll see you back here when we're ready to talk Tommyknockers.
See you during the Tommyknockers. Thanks for watching Misery, episode 15 of We All Float Down Here, Stephen King podcast.